right, welcome everybody. Welcome to an office hours specifically to discuss coronavirus and its impact on not only the upcoming LSAT, but also obviously your LSAT prep, law school plans. We'll be going over a lot. Guys, as you guys come in, please make sure that your microphones are muted. Just so obviously we're not distracting the discussion. Now, I know that I'm sure a ton of you guys have a lot of questions, so obviously please don't hesitate to either drop them in the chat. You can also use the raise the hand option if you want to ask a question. I would imagine this is going to be a larger session than the sessions that we're going to see the rest of the way here between now and March 31st, which is when Trump's voluntary quarantine period comes to an end. And just so you guys realize, for those of you who don't know, what we're doing is for our paid students, we are hosting a session every day, starting today, with this Q&A on COVID-19 and its impact, and then obviously with substantive LSAT sessions the rest of the way in an effort to help inspire you to make the most of this time, because obviously while this is a very uncertain time for a number of reasons, being stuck at home with no distractions is actually a great thing for your LSAT prep. So what I want to do here is I will jump in the meeting with my iPad, and we'll obviously go over where things currently stand with the LSAT, the March LSAT, and then obviously thinking about April and June. Again, for those of you who are not aware, the March LSAT was canceled. And obviously that was a very different from just a week before, right? We got the initial statement by LSAC was that they gave March takers the ability to reschedule their test date to April, June, or July at no charge, and they gave everyone until tomorrow, actually, March 20th, to do that. And then this week, obviously, on the 16th, which I want to say was Tuesday, or was it Monday? On Monday, they actually officially canceled the March LSAT and automatically registered all March takers for the April LSAT, which is April 25th, for those of you who are taking that exam. And so a couple of things we just want to bring up here, and obviously you can get to this page from LSAC's main page. If you go, for example, to LSAC's main page, you see at the top there, update. This is their coronavirus update page, which is definitely something that you want to make yourself familiar with and obviously monitor. We will obviously send any important updates to you guys via email, push, and text message, but obviously this is coming directly from the source here. And as you see here, this is the current situation, right? March has been canceled. Everyone has been automatically registered for April. As of now, right, they are proceeding as though April and June are going to proceed, right? If you look at the second bullet point here, it says, while none of us can predict how the COVID-19 situation will evolve, we are hopeful that the April and June tests will be able to go forward as planned. And so as of right now, we do not see any disruption to April and June. Now, obviously that could change. And so I think that's obviously where some of our concerns are coming from. And so that's really what I want to talk to you guys about in terms of, okay, how is this impacting us? What should we do in the meantime? Especially for those of us who are planning to take March. So the good news is, if you were planning to take March, there's not a whole lot of impact if you have to push that to April, right? Assuming that you're trying to apply to law schools now, it seems like only schools that had May application deadlines, and assuming you didn't have a previous LSAT score already in place, are the ones who are going to be impacted by the March cancellation. Because if you don't have an LSAT score in place and the application deadline is after April 22nd, which was when the March LSAT score was going to be released, that's going to prevent you from being able to apply to law schools. Now, I would assume that what we're going to see is law schools extend their application deadlines as a result of this pandemic, right? I think obviously a lot of schools' application deadlines had already passed well before this, and so I don't think that's going to have any impact on those. But for schools with, April application deadlines, May application deadlines, June, July, I think obviously, you're probably going to see some of that change as as the situation unfolds, depending on what happens with the April and June LSATs. Now, obviously, if the April LSAT is able to go as planned, I think a lot of this stuff naturally resolves itself, assuming those May application deadline schools extend. But that's where we currently are. Now, in terms of, for you, if you were preparing for the March LSAT, obviously, getting ready for an exam and then having it be postponed for a month is not ideal. But as we know about the LSAT, time is an incredible ally when it comes to your LSAT prep. So what you should do is take this as a blessing in disguise and use this additional time to continue to work towards your target score, right? And it's really not that different from what I experienced when I tried to take the LSAT the first time. When I, made a mistake on logic games, I ended up canceling my score. Back in my day, as I always say, that they used to average LSAT scores, and so I had to cancel. And so, I walked in thinking I was going to be ready to take it and get it over with, and then I ended up having to cancel and retake the next exam. And it was that additional period of time that allowed me to even take my comfort with the exam to that next level, which really guaranteed that the next attempt I would be able to achieve my target score. So my advice to the March takers who are now looking at April is, let's make the most of this additional time, right? Obviously, if you've gone through your course and you have your foundation in place, the most important thing is the simulated practice on digital LSATs, right? Being aware of not burning yourself out, following the one full length exam per week, and then breaking it up, doing individual sections the rest of the week, to continue to practice under time pressure, but without experiencing the mental fatigue of the digital exam, of the full-length exam. Now, obviously, if you aren't planning to apply to law schools right now in this cycle, and you're looking at the fall of 2020 for your applications, then I don't think any of this stuff is relevant as of now, right? Obviously, if the situation continues to be present and continues to result in disruption and cancellations, obviously it's not only going to be related to the LSAT, but obviously it's going to be related to everything else, including law school. So I think that's something we definitely just want to, play by ear as the situation unfolds. But again, I think, as we've always said, the ideal exam or the latest ideal exam for those of you considering applying in the fall is the August LSAT. Because that way you would have your LSAT score in hand before application, or right around the time application cycles open in September, which would then obviously allow you to take full advantage of rolling admission. And so that's the way I would think about it. Now, the beauty of those of you who are using LSATMax, our entire system is designed for remote learning. So being quarantined at home is not going to prevent you from either accessing the course materials, accessing the office hours replays on demand, or joining the live ones, as all of you who are now here with Zoom. And then obviously, even with our private tutoring, it being remote, done via Zoom video conference, very similar to what you're seeing here, there's absolutely no reason for you to see this result in an inability for you to prepare for the exam. Now, obviously, if you're dealing with other issues that are going to supersede the importance of this exam in your life, completely different discussion. But assuming that you're everything else is okay, and all we're doing is playing out this voluntary quarantine period, let's definitely make the most of this time, because not only are you quarantined in your home, you also don't have distractions. Right? There's no March Madness, there's no NBA. Now, obviously, Netflix is present, and it looks like quarantine and Netflix and quarantine is becoming the new Netflix and chill. But if you can pause Netflix for a little bit and focus on your LSAT prep, I think that would be a really great use of your time. Now, just a couple of things I did want to emphasize in terms of LSATMax, because I do know we have been receiving some questions about how to access some of the office hours replays. And so just so you guys know, the office hours replays are available from the left menu on the office hours icon here. And on the online version, it's the same clock icon. And this will allow you to see all of the replays. And if you are a paid student, you see the most recent ones at the top, right? Whereas if you're a free student, you're just going to see the free ones, which are all my Q&As. This one will obviously also be free once the replay goes live. But as I mentioned, starting tomorrow, we will be turning our attention to substantive LSAT prep, and I can actually pull up that schedule for you guys just so we can go over what we are going to be covering. And again, as I mentioned in all of these office hours, please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any requests for topics during the office hours. And I hope you guys are realizing that we don't take your feedback lightly, whether that's with adding office hours to the program, whether that's with the new written explanations for the logical reasoning questions, which I hope you guys have noticed that we are now through must be true in the course. And I am currently in the process of uploading quantifiers, cannot be true, weaken, and then strengthen and strengthen with necessary. So we are making remarkable progress with those written explanations. One of the beauties of not being able to go outside. Gives us a lot of time to work on content for you guys. I hope you're finding the new errors and reasoning section helpful for those of you who haven't seen it, right? We have this new section, common fallacies. I should download the course. And then we are also about to release some new flashcard sets for errors and reasoning to help you, again, identify logical fallacies and get more comfortable with that skill, because it is obviously invaluable. Now, in terms of the office hours schedule coming up here, tomorrow at 1 p.m. we have strengthened questions with Ravi. Again, remember Ravi did score a perfect 180. And then on Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific time, we have linear games with Ben. On Sunday at noon, we have weekend questions with Sam. Monday at noon, we have solitary passages with Andrea. Tuesday at noon, we have timed section and practice LSAT review in terms of how to best do that, right? The best practices on what a lot of people refer to as blind review, how to take advantage of that as you turn your attention to time pressure. Then on the 25th, which is Wednesday at noon, Wednesday the 25th at 1 p.m. we have must be true questions with Ravi again. A week from today at noon, it's going to be group games with Brandon. Next Friday, comparative passages with Andrea at noon. Next Saturday, 9 a.m., sufficient and necessary conditions with Ben. Next Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific time, multilinear games with Yelena. And then the 30th, we have errors in reasoning with Sam at noon. And then the last day of the quarantine, March 31st at 11 a.m. Pacific time, we have hybrid games with Yelena. And yes, this session, Joaquin, will be uploaded as well as all of the upcoming sessions. So the beauty of our system is not only can you join them live, but they are also all available on demand via the Office Hours portal here on the left menu. And so that's really what I wanted to talk about with you guys. Let me, William, that email was, we sent out an email with the schedule, but let me see if I can drop it into chat here. Yeah, there you go. So that's the current schedule if you guys want to copy paste that. But that is going to be the schedule here for our COVID-19 office hour quarantine Office Hours Bonanza. So definitely make sure you come out, take advantage of this additional content and ability to clarify any issues that you are experiencing with LSAT prep. You know, the beauty, again, as I mentioned, unlike your typical standardized exams that are subject-based, you know, having a last-minute postponement of your exam is actually not a great thing, because you spent a lot of time memorizing, right? You spent a lot of time getting ready for this subject-based exam. Whereas with the LSAT, it's not a subject-based exam, it's testing the way you think. And obviously time is an incredible ally to changing the way you think. Excuse me. Thankfully, nobody's in the office, because if I had cough like that right around people, ooh, that would have been pandemonium. So yeah, so now with that stuff out of the way, I did want to open it up to questions that you guys may have about, you know, anything really. I know that obviously there's a lot of uncertainty out there with a large number of things, but obviously, you know, this is, I don't know much about COVID-19, but I do know a lot about remote learning and LSAT prep. So I think, you know, if we focus our attention on that, we can get some really useful things out to you guys today, which hopefully you can take advantage of over this, you know, quarantine period, whatever that may be. And obviously I realize that different locations have different rules, but we're in Los Angeles, so we are in the heart of the kind of voluntary quarantine that you're seeing around the country. All right, so great. We got some questions here. First from Rachel, did you say the last exam to apply this cycle is in August? So again, no. So in terms of applying this cycle, right? So if we want to apply to law school for the class starting in the fall of 2020, the last LSAT is going to be dependent on the application deadline of the schools that you're interested in. And so if you want me, for example, I can pull up for you guys some deadlines here. We can talk about what I mean. Like, for example, I'm assuming this is accurate. No, this is not. One second. Let me find. I'll find it real quick. Give me 1 second here. All right, so let's take a look at some examples. So for example, University of Akron, their application deadline was March 31st. The reason I picked Akron is it's first in my alphabetical list. So as you can see now, in terms of if I'm applying to University of Akron, barring some change to their application deadline, the last LSAT that I could have taken to make that would have been the February exam, which the results just came out, right? And so, again, I think it really depends on the school. So if you look, so we have some other examples, like University of Arizona's application deadline is July 15th, right? So as long as you can take an LSAT and have that score in hand before that deadline, you can apply. Now, obviously, with rolling admissions, the sooner you apply, the better. But obviously, I'm assuming a lot of these schools are going to experience disruption here, which will probably result in them extending their application deadlines. Now, again, some schools, right, their application deadlines have passed. Columbia University, for example, February 15th is closed. Harvard, for example, was February 28th. And so those have already closed, and so those are already not an option for this cycle. What I was saying about the August LSAT was, if you're planning to apply for the next cycle, so for the fall, for the class starting in fall of 2021, those applications are going to open in September of 2020. If you could have an LSAT score in hand by latest the August LSAT, you're putting yourself in a position to take advantage of the rolling admission. So that's what I was trying to convey with that. All right, so let's keep going through these questions. Logan, if we had a study schedule in place, 3 tests a week for the March LSAT and still have time, still have some we have not taken. Should we wait to take those or stay on schedule and then go back and do older tests? So yeah, I think I would, again, if you want to save the newer exams for your last practice exam, that's totally fine. But I wouldn't not take advantage of this additional time by taking more exams right now, right? And I'm hoping we're saying 3 tests, 1 per week, right? Because if we're taking 3 full-length LSATs a week, I would highly recommend not doing that. You're gonna burn yourself out. Taking 5 section LSATs under time pressure is extremely mentally draining. And so what we recommend in our world is do 1 full-length exam a week. The rest of the week, continue to practice under time pressure, but do individual sections. And again, one of our sessions with Brandon that we mentioned during this Bonanza, we'll talk about how to best review that work. But yes, I would say that if you were planning to take LSATs every weekend between now and the March LSAT, I would continue to do that between now and the April LSAT. But it's totally fine if you want to save the more recent exams as the latest exams that you take prior to your actual exam. Absolutely. So Willie's question is explaining rolling admissions. All rolling admissions means is that applications to law school are considered in the order they're received. So for example, if a law school's applications open on September 1st, and I submit my application on day 1, my application is going to be at the top of the stack. Whereas if I apply in December to that same school, it's going to appear in the December portion of the applications, right? And so obviously all else being equal, it's a better idea to apply sooner rather than later, because as they start to accept students and make offers of admission, and students accept those offers of admission, the class starts to fill up, it becomes more competitive, right? Now, all that being said, right, as I've talked about in my personal journey, which you guys can watch the Q&A that I did on law school admissions, right? I applied day 1, I was waitlisted. The year I took my personal statement seriously, I applied in the middle of December and I was accepted within 2 weeks, right? So again, I think while you definitely want to be aware of rolling admissions, you also want to spend the time to make your application as strong as possible, whether that's with a higher LSAT score, a better personal statement, right? Whatever the case may be. All right, so I hope that was helpful. So I want to study with the best materials I can use, but since there are so many practice tests, I don't imagine I will be able to get through all of them. My thought is that the most recent tests are better to study with than the older tests because they're more up to date. Should I plan on focusing on those ones? So yeah, again, so if you look at the way, like for example, LSATMax's course is laid out, in the homework assignments that we assign, like for example, and this is what I was talking about where, the explanations are now live. I can actually show you what we're talking about. If you go, for example, in the sufficient and necessary homework, you get a sense of these detailed explanations that we now have available for every single question. But what I'm trying to get across is that these questions we're pulling from the older exams. I think we built the course with everything before prep test 40. And the reason for that is we want to keep the newer exams fresh for your practice, right? And so I think what I would recommend is, yes, I would try to save the newer exams for when you feel like you have the foundation in place and you want to see where you currently stand. I think I would use the older questions as you build that foundation and get prepared. But remember, there's really nothing wrong with the older exams, right? Even when you go before the June 2007 exam, the only real difference is that instead of having 4 solitary passages, you're going to have 3 solitary, 1 comparative. Now, obviously, you do see, frequency of question types kind of change. Like principal questions are so common right now. Rule substitution questions on logic games, those are brand new, for example. You don't see those on the older exams. So you definitely want to, spend time on the newer exams to make sure you're fully aware of the recent kind of changes. But I do think there's nothing wrong with older exams. So don't hesitate to use those if you need them. All right, so this is a question about us uploading more explanation videos for the logical reasoning. So again, we're not uploading explanation videos, right? But what we are doing is we are uploading written explanations for all of the logical reasoning questions that appear in the LSATMax course and all of the prep tests. So for example, if you look at the course, when you're reviewing the question, you're going to see these detailed explanations, right? Which not only will tell you if it's an argument or fact, it'll tell you if it's valid or flawed, it'll identify the question type, stimulus summary, strategy overview, answer choice anticipation, answer choice explanation, not only for the correct, but also the incorrect ones, and then also a key takeaway. And so, yes, we are working on uploading those. As I mentioned, currently we are, in terms of the prep tests, I think 89, 88, 87, 86, and 85 have them. We are currently working on uploading 84 and 83. And then in terms of where we are with the course, we are through must be true. I'm currently in the process of uploading quantifiers, cannot be true, weaken, and strengthen. So yes, those are coming. And obviously, as I mentioned, that is a direct result of your request. Now remember, if you do encounter a question that doesn't have an explanation and you would like one, you can always go on the message board and post our question. And obviously our tutors are extremely active, particularly right now because they have nothing else really to fill their time. So definitely take advantage of that if you encounter any questions that are giving you trouble that don't already have an explanation. All right, so question about remote learning. I'm having a hard time finding a good work study space during the quarantine. I live in the inner city in a small house where every noise inside and outside can be heard. I'm the type of person who needs silence when I work. Local libraries are temporarily closed. Any ideas on alternative workspaces? So a couple of things. I think I think what's better than an alternative workspace is trying to get comfortable with studying with a little bit of noise. Because remember, barring some change in how they administer the exams, you're taking the exam in a room with other people and a decent number of other people and proctors. And so there's going to be noises taking place. And so I do see the recommendation for noise canceling earphones. A lot of students use earplugs, which are obviously more cost effective, but remember, you can't use earplugs on the exam. And there will be background noise. And actually something that you definitely want to consider, excuse me, for those of you who have the opposite problem, which is you have too much quiet and you want to make some background noise, we do have this app, Exam Proctor, which lets you simulate white noise, background noise, as it proctors an LSAT for you. So that is an option too if you're trying to get comfortable with having some noise present, because I do think you do want to get comfortable with that because that's going to be most likely your reality. But outside of that, I do think earplugs are a more cost-effective solution, but obviously if you wanted to waste some money, you can always buy noise-canceling headphones as well. With that being said, I do think we do want to bring up one other thing here about a recent change. Because LSAC is generally very strict about what you can do in the exam. But you notice down here, you can now bring a face mask in, and they are allowing you to bring hand sanitizer in, right? Willie, you cannot use earplugs or earphones during the exam. So here's an interesting question. Do I think this is a good time to negotiate tuition? So I'm assuming the idea here is you've already been accepted. You're trying to convince a school to let you in. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I would imagine, in a recession, you generally see more students apply to graduate schools. And so obviously, I don't think that you're going to see that in this cycle. So if you're applying right now, you might have an ability to still do that. I do feel, though, if we head into a recession, this next application cycle is going to be more competitive, because generally what you see is more students applying to law school or graduate school in general when there's a downturn in the economy. Based on what people are saying, it does seem like, we are heading towards a recession. So that is something to definitely be aware of. Sure, no, yes, I did answer your question. If you missed it, I would definitely check out the replay of this, which will be live before the end of today. And then, so yeah, I think while we're here, we might as well go through these other ones. These are the frequently asked questions right now. And so remember, there's different things happening internationally versus North America. And so, again, just to emphasize that the current status of the March 30th LSAT in the United States and Canada is that it has been canceled. Everybody who was registered for that has been automatically registered for the April 25th exam. Now, obviously, you see the contact information there for LSAC. If you have any questions or your concerns, you're more than welcome to reach out to them directly. In terms of, we talked about this, the status for the April LSAT is currently scheduled to proceed as planned, right? They're obviously continuing to monitor the situation, and should it become necessary to close or move, right, they will obviously inform us. And you notice that they have made a commitment here to make a final decision on the April LSAT no later than Friday, April 10th, right? Now, obviously, if it comes out before that, we will push it out to you guys. One of the reasons we emphasize keeping your exam date accurate in LSATMax and making sure you are subscribed to our email and text communications is that we do send out this important information via those channels. And I can't tell you how many times we've sent out a reminder that, tonight is the deadline to register for the LSAT, and students thank us for reminding them to register because they hadn't registered prior to getting our text message. So definitely make sure that your exam date is accurate and up to date in the program, and that you are subscribed to those communications, because as soon as we get word from LSAC about any changes, we will update you immediately. In terms of those of us internationally, obviously, the February exam was canceled. The March LSAT, again, canceled. And it seems like now, in terms of what's happening moving forward, the June international exam, again, is currently scheduled to proceed as planned. And, given some of the news that we are seeing, that it does seem like the situation seems like it's improving, in China and South Korea a little bit, whereas obviously Italy is the complete opposite. So it is still hard to know for sure. But as of right now, it is planned to proceed accordingly, with the exception, you notice, of China here. And based on the direction from Chinese health officials, they've delayed the opening of registration for the June 28th LSAT in China until it gets a little bit closer to that exam date. In terms of steps that are being taken to protect the health and well-being at LSAT test sites, right, you can see here, obviously canceling the March LSAT was part of that, but obviously moving forward, you notice that they are exploring alternatives. And so the nice thing to see here is that even in the world where, this crisis continues, it seems like LSAC is making arrangements to allow students to still take these exams. And you notice that's in the second paragraph where it says, given the uncertainty of this evolving crisis, we are also aggressively exploring options to administer the LSAT in alternative ways that will best protect the health and well-being of test takers in the broader community. These alternatives could include secure remote proctored tests, an additional spring-summer administration and other options that would meet evolving public health guidelines. And then obviously down here, we talked about face masks and hand sanitizer. And then obviously this question that, obviously nobody really knows the answer to because of all the questions about how this is being spread, is something that I think will evolve as we get more and more information. Okay. So Bradley's question is about the study calendar. I'm having a difficult time with the study calendar. Can you make it where the study calendar coincides with exam day? So just to be clear, our study calendars do coincide with an exam day. I think the reason that sometimes it's challenging for students to navigate our course calendars is we're the only program to offer instant and lifetime access. And so if you sign up for our program well in advance of your target exam date and well in advance of our quote unquote recommended study schedule, it's a little bit strange to understand. But remember, what we recommend is getting started immediately, right? Time is an incredible ally when it comes to your LSAT prep. If you look at my journey from the 140s to 174, it took me 7 months. My course was only the first 10 weeks of that process, right? And so the way you really want to think about LSAT prep, right, it is a 2-step process. The first step is the course. And so what you want to do is use our recommended study schedule as an order of assignments. And if you don't want to use the study schedule, you can use the app. The idea is on this full course screen, I want you to proceed through these icons from top to bottom, left to right. So for example, when I'm on the main point assignment, what am I going to do? I'm going to watch the main point video lesson, which you see here. And then I'm going to do the main point homework assignment, which is 30 real main point questions from previous LSATs. And then I'm going to spend time to review those questions, right? Going through the detailed explanations that we've talked about. And that's going to be your first step. So just progressing through these icons from top to bottom, left to right, completing all of the assignments in them in the order that we set them forth. So for example, in sufficient and necessary, I would do the first section, which is the video lesson. Once I complete that, I would do my sufficient and necessary condition flashcards. After that, I would do the missing premise drills flashcards. After that, I would do the argument completion flashcards. And then I would do the 50 real LSAT questions that invoke sufficient and necessary conditions. And again, then I would review those questions, right? And so that's the way you want to think about how to proceed with the course. And the sooner that we can finish the course, right, which is getting through all of these assignments, right, the sooner we can turn our attention to the second step of the process, which again is going to be taking what we've learned and simulating them on timed digital LSATs, right? You see here, as we've shown before, our app makes these digital LSATs available in the same format that you're going to experience on exam day. So if you have an iPad or an Android tablet, that is not only how you should take your simulated LSATs, but it's how you should take all of your homework assignments or any question that you do, whether it's a homework assignment, whether it's a full-length simulated LSAT, whether it's an individual section, right? Because you want to get comfortable with this digital exam layout, right? With a timer in the top right corner, highlighting, right, etc. And so the question about just move to phase 2, where do I get the timed sections for practice? And so just so everyone's aware, both online and in app, what you want to do is tap the filter in the top right-hand corner. Again, in the app, it's an icon, this filter icon. Online, it's actually the word filter, and you want to just tap prep tests, which will take you to all of the previously released prep tests. And again, as I mentioned, we have already started to upload the explanations for the logical reasoning questions. So now if I come here, you can see that they're available. And look at that, got it right. Who says guessing never pays? Sorry about that. So that's where you access all of the digital practice LSATs. And remember, if you're not an LSATMax student, you can purchase those a la carte. And if you just want to do sections of a various exams, so for example, let's say you're just looking for individual sections, you notice when I enter prep test 80 here, at the top I have the full exam option, which will launch all 4 sections, right? Underneath, I have the individual sections that I can do individually, right? And one of the questions that we get a lot of is because, right, every released LSAT is only the full release sections, right? They don't release the experimental section, but when we take full-length digital LSATs to practice, we want to make sure that we're simulating that 5-section experience. And so the best way to do that is take a section from any other exam as your quote-unquote experimental, and then launch a full exam, because then you're going to have 2 sections, the 15-minute break, followed by 2 sections, and you notice that's going to lay out in the exact same format as 3 sections, break, 2 sections. Now, obviously, the first section, which is our experimental, is not going to apply to our raw score and scaled score of that actual prep test, but it is a previous section from a different exam, so our performance on it is still going to be relevant to what we are doing, right? So you definitely still want to spend the time to review even your experimental sections, right? And so, quick question regarding the test. Will the test absolutely digital? Is there any way to request an old-fashioned Scantron? So from my understanding, barring some kind of accommodation, which I'm still not even sure what that accommodation would be, every single LSAT administered in North America, which is Canada, the United States, and Puerto Rico, is the digital exam. And so absolutely, right? You know, one of the reasons we no longer send all the prep tests in hard copy, we used to, because we were big fans of technology and remote learning for reasons outside of the digital LSAT, the same idea, for reasons outside of this pandemic, right? But once the exam transitioned to a digital exam, there's no reason to use the paper pencil format, right? We used to send that to you because when it was a paper pencil exam and everything in our program was digital, we still wanted you to replicate the experience of exam day, right? Obviously back then it was paper pencil. Well, now the experience of exam day is a digital LSAT on a tablet. And so, I would highly recommend taking advantage of our app's ability to mimic that experience for iPads and Android tablets. Now, again, you don't need a Microsoft Surface tablet to mimic a digital tablet LSAT. All you need is a tablet that's about the same size as a Microsoft Surface Pro, which is your normal iPad, your normal Android tablet. A tablet's functionality is the same. And so obviously, we would not recommend going and getting a Microsoft Surface Pro tablet to prepare for the LSAT, because most of the things that will help you prepare for the LSAT are not created for the Microsoft Surface Pro tablet. Like, for example, LSATMax. We don't have an app for that tablet, and we're not planning on releasing one. Because we feel that iPad and Android are obviously way more common, and the tablet is just as effective in terms of mimicking that experience. Now, the other thing to remember, I don't want you to feel like you have to go buy a tablet if you don't have one. If you're an LSATMax student, if anybody has an iPad or an Android tablet that you can borrow, all you need to do is get it, download our app, log in, and you can access your account and take a simulated digital LSAT. In terms of Joaquin's question about LSATs taken outside of the US and Canada, international LSATs are still paper pencil. Now, obviously, they're working to make that transition, but as of now, they are still paper pencil. So William's question is, they're using a Surface to administer it. So you get a booklet of scratch paper. And one of the things that we've talked about, and we've talked about it on numerous different Q&As, including a lot of the ones that are available for free here. And so I just want to emphasize, if you have any questions, if you have any questions about the digital LSAT, if you go to the very beginning of our Office Hours portal, again, if you're a paid student, it's going to be at the bottom. if you're a free student, these are going to appear at the top. Both of these Q&As about the digital LSAT go over a lot of that. The first one here is before the July LSAT, which was the first administration. The second one is afterwards, so we got a lot of feedback from students. And so those are two really good office hours to watch if you have any concerns about the digital LSAT. But as we have emphasized repeatedly, not only on those, but also on the free logic games Q&A, which is down here as well, is that the logic games is the most important section to focus your attention on, because you no longer have the luxury of having the shell of a game on a piece of paper to guide your work. And so, if you notice, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking at this logic game on your tablet, but all your work is going to be on your scratch paper. And navigating that process of working on two different mediums, I think, is really important and something you definitely want to get used to, because as we talk about throughout the course, right, the LSAC rewards students who make use of previous work. And obviously, if you're nicely and neatly organized, you're able to take advantage of previous work much easier than if you're not. And so, obviously these are more problematic for students who are coming from preparing for the paper pencil LSAT, right? Because you're making a transition from something that was very different. Whereas if you're new to the LSAT and you've only seen the digital LSAT, it's obviously going to be an easier transition, but you still want to emphasize the importance of keeping yourself organized on your scratch paper so that you can use your previous work as you progress. And just remember, in LSATMax, in addition to written explanations, if we do have video explanations, and again, every single logic game that we assign in the course has a video explanation, you can actually watch those detailed walkthroughs.
So which one no in this case is 4, and if
very
it must
similar
be true
to what you would
always
see
the case. So
an instructor do in front of a whiteboard in a classroom. Obviously,
C, the third digit is 3.
this being
again,
remote,
the possibility is that
and in the quarantine, much better solution than having to go anywhere. So what can, again, I don't have any hint here. My gut tells me that schools will extend their application deadlines, particularly if we see more disruption with the LSAT. As I said, the March LSAT is not a huge disruption because it's really only going to impact schools who had May application deadlines. And again, it only impacts students who are applying to those schools who didn't have a previous LSAT score as well, right? But obviously, if something were to happen in April, something were to happen in June, I think all of these schools with later application deadlines are going to extend them, because remember, the reason they have later application deadlines is that they struggle to fill their classes, right? You notice all the top schools have early application deadlines because there's no reason for them to extend it. They get enough applications within that period to fill their class. Whereas if you go down the rankings, you generally see the application deadlines extend out because they're not getting as many applications, and having a longer or a wider application window helps that process. And obviously, if we have LSATs being canceled, students not being able to get LSAT scores and submit applications, they're probably going to extend those application deadlines to allow for that. Obviously, haven't heard any reports yet, but my gut tells me that based on why we see later application deadlines from those schools, we will also see application deadlines be extended. Any other questions? I did want to pull up a couple other things here, just that I feel particularly for those of you who are not our students yet. Obviously, for our students, again, there's nothing that I would love to emphasize is, a lot of students reach out to me because as you know, my phone number from my office and my cell phone is in my signature in any of the emails that you receive when you create an account. And, a lot of students reach out and they're surprised that I actually pick up the phone, but, those numbers are there for a reason. And so, if you have any questions, if I can help in any way, as you navigate your LSAT prep, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And then obviously, I did want to pull up this other, but I can't really seem to find it. Let me see if I can find it here. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to drop them in there. But what I was going to say is if anybody has any questions, concerns, they're looking for guidance, I'm going to drop it in the chat here. If you text LSAT to this number, you can actually schedule a free consult with our LSAT experts who, again, have extensive experience in remote prep. And so if you're looking at LSATMax for the first time because of this pandemic, obviously we feel the benefits of remote learning exist outside of a pandemic, but obviously in a pandemic they're even heightened. And so again, happy to chat with anybody if you guys have questions, concerns, how to use LSATMax in our remote learning process during this time. We're happy to help any way we can. So please don't hesitate to take advantage of that. Again, just text LSAT to 310-818-7743. Again, text LSAT to 310-818-7743. All right, so going back to the questions, so again, I think this is a great question, Joaquin. And again, the beauty of on-demand prep, right? And this was obviously something that I found to be extremely problematic when I used to teach in class, right? Because, when I used to teach in class, first I had a set schedule that I had to get through the curriculum that day. And so by definition, that meant that as I went through that curriculum, some students felt held back, other students felt left behind, right? But I felt even more problematic was if I introduced something challenging, for example, strength in questions, which I feel is where LSAT prep generally takes a turn for the worse for all students, is when you get to strength in questions, and particularly strengthen with necessary, strengthen with sufficient, or the assumption questions, right? But I introduced that on a Tuesday night. No matter how that student or how my students reacted to that material, no matter what, on Thursday I would have to come back and teach them something new, which would cause a snowball effect, right, where you feel overwhelmed and you don't process anything. So in terms of Joaquin's question here, if it's taking you longer to go through something, it's totally fine, right? That's the beauty of an on-demand course with lifetime access, right? And I think what's more important than rushing through materials is understanding. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be an expert the first time through. And so I do want to caveat that with, just because you complete a section of the course and you get a lot of questions wrong, that doesn't mean you shouldn't progress, right? Remember, you're going to have plenty of time to continue to hone your skills, right? Whether it's the course diagnostics that we assign, right? The 6 full-length diagnostics that you see here, or whether it's the prep test that we turn our attention to during the practice and review session or period of your prep, right? And so I would highly recommend to take advantage of the on-demand nature of the program and progress at a pace that makes sense for you, right? A lot of students ask the other question about like, oh, I'm working, I'm juggling all these other obligations, I'm not able to spend as much time per day, which is fine. It's just going to take you longer to get through the materials, right? And so I think, again, the beauties of remote learning, on-demand learning, is that it allows you to progress at a pace that makes sense for you. And then obviously, the one thing that I would say is pay attention to your analytics, right? As we track your progress and highlight your strengths and weaknesses so that, as we progress, we can then say, hey, I'm struggling with argument structure questions. Maybe I want to go back and rewatch that. Or even better, again, something that I do want to really emphasize for you guys is maybe there's some additional content related to that. And if you notice here, and I go into my filter for office hours and I'm struggling with argument structure and I apply that filter, you notice it brings up Brandon's argument structure office hours, which I can then watch. And so, if you're looking for specific areas, right, like errors in reasoning, right, it's going to bring up the common fallacies office hours session, right? So definitely take advantage of these filters, right, where you can even say, oh, prep test 89 is giving me trouble. We can pull up an office hour session specifically related to prep test 89's logic games, right? And we're going to continue to have these filters available so that, as we create this enormous library of LSAT content, that you're able to navigate it in a way that's effective for you, right? Because navigating, hundreds and hundreds of hours of content, can be challenging if you're looking for a specific pain point of yours. And so the filter is something that we're going to continue to emphasize and continue to flush out so that you're able to take advantage of those office hour sessions on a very targeted basis. And then obviously with private tutoring, right, if you identify a pain point in your analytics, using private tutoring to address that is obviously a really good idea as well. And again, if any of you have any questions about what private tutoring looks like with us, this is the private tutoring experience, right? Now, one of the things that I do want to emphasize is we have the ability to do visual things. So let's say you wanted to work through, logic games with me, right? Well, if you look here, this is from a previous. So if you look here, let me get this open and let's go full screen. And you notice we have the ability to actually draw out things and work through, for example, logic games with you in a very visual way, very similar to me sitting next to you. And that's the beauty of the remote private tutoring, is the experience is identical, except better because, one, you don't have to move. Again, taking the pandemic out of the equation, obviously now we can't move, so it's obviously great to have this resources. But even if you could move, why would you waste time sitting in traffic, commuting to get the same experience you can get from the comfort of your own home, right? So something to be aware of. Okay, so here's an interesting question. My diagnostic score has gone down since test one. What are your thoughts about that? So a couple of things. One, it's very, very common for students to see a drop in their diagnostic score from, if they took an exam before they start the course and then diagnostic one. And the reason for that is, your timing is just terrible, right? One of the most common questions we get, right, is, Mehran, I watched the sufficient and necessary lesson. How on earth am I supposed to do that in a minute and 24 seconds? Well, the idea is at this point, you're not in a position to do it in a minute, 24 seconds. That's not something to be concerned about. Our hope is by, taking a methodical approach, approaching the exam the right way, you're able to, get comfortable with it and get to a place where you can do these things in a minute and 24 seconds, right? But I think initially what you're experiencing is that your timing gets worse before it gets better. And so it's natural to see a drop in your diagnostic scores early on. Now, to see a 12-point drop between your first diagnostic score and your sixth diagnostic score tells me that there's something wrong there. What I would suggest in that situation is, please reach out to us. Let's schedule a call. Again, as we've always said, LSATMax is a remote learning process, but that does not mean you are alone. We are available to guide you when you hit these kind of roadblocks. Please reach out to us. Let's schedule a call. Let's get specific with what's going on so we can make the changes to overcome that. And again, as as I love to emphasize my personal story, because obviously, I hope it shows you it's learnable. But remember, that process was not easy for me. I got stuck in so many different places. And for me to overcome being stuck, I had to address what was causing me or preventing me from getting over that hump, right? And obviously one of the ones that I talk about really, really frequently, which I will drop the link here in this chat before we wrap this up, is my epiphany on logical reasoning, where I have this video from way back when. You won't even recognize that it's me because I don't have the beard. But I talk about this logical reasoning epiphany. When I was stuck in the mid 160s and couldn't get my score to improve, this minor adjustment to my approach was the point of no return for me, right? Where not only was I able to get my logical reasoning accuracy to where I needed it to be to break a 170, the exam clicked and there was no turning back. And so with that, I think that's a great way to end this session. Again, guys, we are available if you have any questions, concerns. We understand that this is a very unique period of time that is obviously shrouded in remarkable uncertainty. But as I would say is, take advantage of this additional free time. Take advantage of the remote learning resources that we offer. Use this downtime to get closer to achieving your target score. Because imagine you come out of this with that target score in hand and open all of those doors for yourself as society gets back to normal. And obviously, our thoughts and prayers are with everybody. Please stay safe and obviously follow the recommended guidelines from health officials as they try to get this situation under control. Until tomorrow, right? Again, don't forget, tomorrow's office hours session is at the same exact time, which is 1 p.m., strengthened questions with none other than Ravi, who again scored the 180. Until then, see you tomorrow.